So I see a couple of people in the chat, and now we are live. Hello, we are about to start. Hello, Stephen.
Hello. Hello. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us. I'm going to open up my chat window if the IRC client works
Yeah,
right
hello, Shish
today.
Kebab. Good to see you again.
Shish Kebab is here. Awesome. I forgot to load up the stream page, so I'm going to do
VFig
that.
has balanced our retain call with a release call. So that was the end of the stream. Thank you very much,
Okay.
everyone.
Thank you for joining us.
Hello, Adrian B. Good to see you all here. Right, let's
All
let's
right.
get this
So,
show on the road. Here we are, week 2.
yeah.
Who knew this was a
It's pretty exciting.
repeatable experience?
That is yeah, it was fun, and these are the things that I look forward to. Um these are the things that I look forward to, the two streams.
And
And
yeah,
it's really great. Yeah.
so yeah, the 2 streams because on Thursdays we run Dos Amigans, where we learn Amiga programming and trying to share that experience and try to get corrections in the chat, which are also welcome on this stream.
Yes, definitely. The interaction in the chat is, I think, possibly the most enjoyable part of it. I mean, we get to interact with other people and learn, and I think the kids call it mob programming.
Indeed.
Um, and it's been really fun. Um, And yeah, I was just saying to Graham that I should save it for the stream. We're going to look at a project today. Spoiler alert: porting a project to GNU Step, and I'm just looking at the source history of it because I got it. It's something that I sort of took over the maintainership of and hack on periodically, and the commit history goes back at least 14 years. And you can
Right.
do this with pretty much any Objective-C application. You can download it, open it in Xcode, click fix it a couple of times to update the settings, and then build and run it.
And that's even more true of GNU Step than it is for Coco,
Absolutely.
because in the free software world we don't have to deprecate anything. If the community wants to maintain something, then the community will maintain it. There's no engineering manager telling you what you are or aren't allowed to spend your time on. So I
Right.
think a lot of the GNU Step application project code comes from sort of demo software or like demo projects that were on OpenStep. I've got a feeling that the text
Mm-hmm.
edit in GNU Step Apps project is
Yep.
actually the OpenStep text edit source code.
We do see this in the Apple ecosystem a little bit as well. Um, in if you, I now need to check. Aha, it is
Live
still there.
research.
Yeah, I just needed to check in Spotlight. There's an app that you get with Xcode called File Merge,
Oh yeah,
and
yeah.
this was advertised in Mac OS 10 in one of the things that I watched at a developer conference or something, where they said, "Hey, just to show you how portable your shit is from Next Step, File Merge app was just copied and built,
Mm,
and we didn't
mm.
make any modifications." And what happens in and you see this in GNU Step as well when you replace the themes and things like that. You just rebuild it and you get a new look, and it's fantastic. Everything retains the usual behaviors. You've got read line. Well, Graham has read line support in all of his text fields, and I don't because I'm remoting into the machine, and I have a slightly less capable keyboard experience. But if you open the file merge app on a modern Mac, it is, as I understand it, the source code, and it doesn't look like it's changed. It's the source code from Next Step's file merge app recompiled for the Mac, and it is my favorite merge utility. The only other one that even compares is called Meld, and that's a GTK app that doesn't run very well on a Mac. Um,
Have you ever seen
and
Kaleidoscope?
oh, I use Kaleidoscope, but never for text files.
Right,
Actually,
right.
I use it for everything else. Kaleidoscope is a Mac app that diffs two of anything, basically.
Indeed, I
Um,
think so.
yeah.
It was Sofa app, and then Sofa were acquired by Facebook, like years and years ago. I remember meeting the developers Jonathan Dan, Dirk Stope, Kathy Shive at WWDC. So we're probably sort of looking at around the 2008 or 9 era. It was when Facebook realised that getting one person to as a contractor to build their iOS app wasn't going to work, and they actually needed some iOS developers. And so I think Black Pixel bought Kaleidoscope, and
I think that's right. Yep.
they had a Subversion client app, and I'm blanking on the name. But anyway, so Sofa sold it to Black Pixel. Black Pixel kept it for a long time, but they have got out of maintaining their own apps, and it's now Christopher Atlan, who I believe is in Austria. And I saw a release announcement for a new version today. So again, there's a project that's been going for at least 1 decade.
Yeah, and this is the thing that I really can't overstate how much I love that I can just pick up old code and run with it. I was traveling for work to meet some colleagues sometime last year when we were still allowed to travel. Actually, it was leading up to the days where we were not allowed to travel, actually. Right. And I was talking to him about, he said, well, what do you hack on for fun? And I told him one of the things that I hack on is CocoaFibs, which is an online backgammon client. And Versions was the SVN client. Yeah, that was fantastic.
Thanks, AJ.
And I hack on CocoaFibs and I hack on Anti-RSI because those are two things that I like to use, and the code is nice and it's nice to work with. And he found it weird. He said, "Oh, you just hack on other people's software." And I said, "Well, yeah, it does the thing I want, and it's free software, and so I can make it do more." And a Cocoa app is just. I use this description for things that I really enjoy that I can't put a feeling on, put a really good rational description for. If you've ever been in an old luxury car, like a 40 or 50-year-old Mercedes top end, like an S-Class or something like that, or an old BMW, or certainly I used to collect old British cars. The Jaguars from the 60s and 70s are fantastic. They're just nice places to be. And a Cocoa application source code, a Cocoa application is just a nice place to be. It's just it behaves. The APIs behave the way you expect them to. When you run the app, it behaves the way you expect it to. It's just fantastic. And these apps are no different. So.
No, and I think I agree with you. What I like is the sort of longevity of the source. Here we are in 2021. We've just started a new Objective-C project, albeit a video streaming project, not a code project. There is code involved, but that's an adjunct. When if we had done a video, some video content for like Swift 2 years ago, you wouldn't be able to use it now because it would. It would no longer be relevant. You would no longer be able to compile any of the code that was shown in the video.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I have Swift even. I have code from Swift 5 applications that need modification to run. And I mean, I was there. I think you were as well through all of the. Through sort of the the Swift 1 to 2, 2 to 3, and so on, when they were still figuring out what the fuck this language is supposed to do.
I have something I need to do at the mention of Swift 1. There we go. Right.
Yeah, I mean, Swift basically became usable on a day-to-day basis with Swift 5. Right. And they still found a way to make it unusable by adding Swift UI half-baked. Like the whole, but a Cocoa, you can download even a large code base. I mean, Quicksilver is for me. Quicksilver is the dream. I want Quicksilver on free software. And if we get into these porting projects and stuff, Quicksilver is the dream. Adium is another one. Colloquy, the IRC client, is another one. But I guess I'm just gonna, it's a good segue point. We can jump right into it. We're gonna look at Anti-RSI today.
Yeah, sure. So what I'm going to do is just switch so we can see the computer. Now, all I have done is checked out this project that you told me about. I haven't attempted to run it. I haven't looked at the source code. I understand what the words anti-RSI mean, but some of the audience might not know what RSI is in this context. So do you want to give an overview and then like a little tour and tell us what we're going to be doing?
Sure. So RSI is repetitive strain injury.
Okay.
It is it's something that I struggle with basically constantly, and have for the better part of the last 2 decades. And it presents differently in everyone. If you have sore wrists or sore hands after a day of typing, if you sit wrong in your chair, those are all injuries that are caused by repeatedly doing the same thing poorly. And for me, that's writing software. Writing software poorly repeatedly causes me strain. And
is that why you don't work in a React shop? Because you don't like repetitively writing poor software.
Right. So it aggravates me most. I had a period over the summer where I was on a sort of a death march, and I decided to sit with my laptop in my lounge chair for 8 weeks straight, working every waking hour, and I got to the point where I had 2 weeks where I just could not type anymore. I was actually pair programming by screen sharing with other developers and basically telling them what buttons to press. So Anti-RSI is a program that was developed many years ago. I can see that it was imported from SVN to Mercurial 14 years ago.
Wow.
And you can find this on GitHub at SRBaker Anti-RSI. This program is very simple. When I inherited it, it came from, I picked it up because I run it, and I have run it continually for all the time that I use a Mac. I basically run Anti-RSI. And what it does is the best thing that you can do to prevent repetitive strain injury is to stop repeating it. And so it enforces breaks. And so periodically, Anti-RSI will, on a configurable, vfig is correct. There is no README. And that's one of the things we're going to fix. So what Anti-RSI does is it, on a timer, it has short breaks and long breaks, and I can't remember what the defaults are. But periodically, it does a short break, and it locks it steals all of your keyboard and mouse input so that nothing you do works. And if you press a key, it resets the timer. So you have to take your hands off of the keyboard for a period of time while it counts down. And then when you start touching keys again after the timer, it starts counting till the next break. And this is very effective.
Okay, nice.
And I really want this. Yeah.
Cool.
Qcoding is talking about their RSI. At their worst, they were unable to pick up their children, and a doctor ordered them 2 hours per day of mouse keyboard. Yeah, that is basically the treatment. The treatment is stop doing what you're doing, which is the opposite of the
Yeah, a colleague on my team has RSI and recently had to take a number of days off from, I think it was mousing, in his case. But it is debilitating, particularly if your livelihood depends on being able to do the thing that causes you the pain.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's particularly poor when you're not quite sure exactly what the cause is. So I use a trackball because when I use a mouse, I get pain in my forearm and my elbow. So I always use a trackball. I always use an ergonomic keyboard. I try to limit my couch and laptop time and things like that. But for everyone, it's different, and you should definitely, seek professional advice on this. I will add that the professional advice is actually not always good. It's never bad, because professional advice is professional advice, but it is poorly understood, really.
Okay. So just
that's the app.
Eugene19 says vertical mouse helps some people. Yeah, for some people that is beneficial, but for some people the trackball works better, and some people want the thumb trackball. So it really does depend on the specific circumstances of the of the injury. But you also mentioned Emacs. I need to admit at this point that we are using the standard X version of Emacs. It is possible to build the Cocoa version of Emacs in GNU Step, and we will do that we will do that on a later stream rather than between the later streams.
Right. It's Cocoa Emacs is really great too. That is literally what you get when you install Emacs for OS X. You get the Cocoa version of Emacs. And Qcoding points out, and this is the most important advice: regardless of gear, brakes are essential, and that is the point of Anti-RSI. It just enforces brakes.
Right. On that note, let's sit here and code for 2 hours.
Let's do that. So you've downloaded it. So we'll take a look at the directory listing here. There's an authors file, which my name is actually not in. What I have done with this project so far is I emailed the original author and got him to fix the licensing message in some of the files, because they had inserted the Xcode template copyright whatever all rights reserved, but it's actually a GPL project.
Okay.
And so I emailed them, because I'm a licensing nut, and said, hey, I think this was an oversight. Do you mind fixing that? Then I imported it into GitHub, and my standard process for trying to do ports of these applications, and I've had various levels of success with this, and is, first of all, find the things that are not going to work. Core graphics and core audio are things that are very unlikely to work.
Right.
So I removed some features that depended on stuff that might not work. One of those things was the dock badge, because that definitely won't work on GNU Step, and we will add that back in the appropriate way. The other thing I removed was the update checker, because the update site doesn't exist anymore. This code base is probably between 15 and 20 years old, and it was dormant for 4 years. No, it was dormant for 8 years, I think, before I picked it up again and started removing stuff. And so it's a very, very simple application. Let's go into Emacs. Can you give me a Dured in Emacs, Graham?
Probably.
Just MX Dured.
Yeah.
I can't get a meta key. There we go. All right. And so if we look at... Oh, whoops. Okay. So if we look here, we've got a few... We'll start with the simple ones. So there's two things. There's Anti-RSI Button, which just overrides... Oh, shit. I cannot use Control key. So I have to use the arrow keys like a child. So Anti-RSI Button, the implementation, it just inherits from NS Button and then overrides some of the methods to behave slightly differently. And that is, so it uses prevent window ordering and catches mouse events, and also makes sure that the Anti-RSI Button should delay window ordering for event. I think it prevents it from changing the window order when you click on the button. And so that's just a simple override. Can you kill that?
Yep.
CXK. And kill anyway. All right. Okay, and then the other simple one is the Anti-RSI level indicator, which is a subclass of NS level indicator. And it's just overriding one method, so that if you click and drag there, you're moving the whole Anti-RSI window. Because the window comes up windowless. it just draws. Maybe I should have recorded a video or something to show here. Anti-RSI just draws a round rect window, which have come back into fashion with Big Whoop, and so it looks very appropriate there. It just draws a gadgetless window, and tells you to take a break, and it's got a status bar. Can you close that one?
Yep.
And those are the two simple ones. There is the Anti-RSI view, which is the main view, and it has the characteristic draw rect, which is how in Cocoa you tell a widget to draw itself, and it uses all stuff that I expect to be in GNU Step. It uses the NS min and max and all that stuff for screen sizes. It uses NS Bezier paths, which are awesome, and those exist. And that's how it draws the. It uses like a pie chart graph with a graph inside of it to let you know how long your break is and how long your next break will be. And that's it. It's very simple code. And if you close that one, we'll go to the main big one. Most of the meat and potatoes of the app is in AntiRSI.m.
Yeah, I was going to say it looked like there was less source code in total than the length of the copying file, which is the GPL license text. But actually, this file is longer than copying.
This file is quite long. It is sort of a god class, and once we get it building and running, we can work on refactoring and things. But I think I also ran an indent on the code at one point. I'm not sure, although the history is not showing that, so maybe it's just well formatted anyway. So here we can see that it's using NS calendar date, which exists in GNU Step as far as I know. It uses, I think, NS timer. And then it uses some binding stuff, which we may have some issues with.
Right.
I'm not sure about that.
Cocoa bindings should be all right. I noticed that it imports the application services header, and I don't know whether we're going to have that.
Right.
But yeah, my other comment. So, is it possible to make Emacs's font a bit bigger? Let me do that. It is possible.
Yep, there you go.
And I can. Does the buffer still fit on the screen?
The stream is only 720p. Okay, there we go.
I can probably do something about that, although I don't know whether I can do it midstream.
You definitely can't do it midstream, and it's sending out the maximum that your internet connection will allow.
Oh, okay.
But I can read that in my tiny window of the stream, so that looks fine. Should be fine. Yep, Eugene19 says it's fine.
Okay,
so we've got some Cocoa binding stuff in here. Do you want to talk about what Cocoa bindings are? Because I don't. I fight with them in this application, and I don't really understand them very well.
Yeah, definitely. In fact, I've recently been working on a cross-platform mobile app using Xamarin Forms, and you've used WinForms in a app before. So the idea of like data bindings in XAML and forms and the sort of I notify property change thing is very similar to Cocoa bindings. So I think Cocoa bindings was introduced in Panther, so in OS 10.10.3, and there's like two parts to it. So the low-level part is KVO, key value observing, which is the idea that one object can observe another object or observe a property on another object. It's actually called a key path, but let's not get into the details too early. It can observe a property on another object and receive a notification when that property changes, and then it can do whatever it wants. Now, Cocoa bindings uses this to essentially with not exactly no code, but with like very repeatable, very abstract code to provide a decoupling between a view and a model, because we can say that this property in the view is observing this property in the model, and so when the model updates, the view needs to redraw. But bindings is two-way. So bindings says when the model updates, the view redraws, and when the view updates, the model changes. So if I've got a text field and it's bound to the employee name property on an object, then when the employee's name changes, the text field should update, and so the UI stays in sync. But if I type a new name into the text field, then the model should update as well.
Right.
Okay. So with me so far. Now what Cocoa does, and like the sort of recommended design pattern, is that there is an object in the middle, which is called the controller. You've got the model, you've got the view. There's got to be something else, otherwise, we're not doing small talk properly. So there is a controller, and that thing's job is to mediate between, mediate this interaction and fire appropriate change notifications. So, like a collection view in the abstract sense, not necessarily an NS collection view, but a view of a collection would probably bind onto an NS array controller, which then manages an array of the model objects, and then when objects are added or removed to the array, or the objects are reordered, or anything else that happens to the collection, the array controller will create the appropriate change notifications for that higher level event. For the higher level in the stack for the view. This didn't make it onto the iPhone. Now, my experience with Xamarin and C# shows that it's possible to do this on a mobile phone, but it is also possible to get into a state where like multiple change events are being fired for multiple UI updates that are all happening at the same time, which then clogs up the UI thread and makes the app unresponsive. So I think that's probably the motivation for not having brought it to UIKit and the iPhone. You have to do special things. So you have to like turn off notifications, do a bunch of changes, turn on notifications again, and then send the batched collection of change notifications, and like getting that pattern correct and getting the thread correctness correct, making sure that the view is fired change notifications on the main thread, and that things that happen in like manage object context happen in the context thread, and so on, requires some quite deliberate management.
Right. Okay. And that makes a lot of sense. And also, you have to be really careful when you're designing systems like this, because it's going to be used by people who are learning the frameworks and so on. And,
right.
And a lot of bad things can happen when you're in a constrained environment. So that makes a lot of sense. All right. So there's some Cocoa binding stuff in here, which we are not sure if that will make it all the way over to GNU Step.
I feel confident about that.
Ah, that's very good. It is old enough that it's probably not too big of a deal. There's some stuff here that's related to things that I have removed already. So there's the draw the doc image and things like that. I didn't do a full removal of a lot of that stuff. So it's but a Cocoa thing is a nice place to be. There's helpful comments in here, which I would just stick them in a different file, because it says here's what the binding shit is and here's the end of the binding shit.
So one of the sort of refactoring steps I would do on this, and I'm not proposing that we do that. I'm proposing that we port the app and then worry about the tidiness if we want it. Is use Objective-C categories to just break them out into different files that are all still categories on the same class, and then worry about like introducing other objects and and appropriate patterns for accessing those objects later.
Yeah, absolutely. And then this is the awake from nib. We are also not entirely sure if we're going to be able to use the nib that is contained, but as far as I recall, the nib just instantiates the main window object and then draws the menu bar. So we've talked about, briefly, that we may end up just replacing the nib with GORM or whatever.
Hmm.
So it's a very big file, but it's the code is pretty easy to follow, and I think
Okay,
it's
so
I've
sorry,
long felt that this is a good candidate. Yep.
if I could just pull us up by
Go ahead, please.
page or so here, just because we were talking about Cocoa bindings. One of the things that people pretty much universally adopted bindings for, user defaults controller is a binding that connects NS user defaults, i.e. the app preferences to the UI, and you'll find a lot of like Mac software developers who never used Cocoa bindings for anything except their app's preferences window, because the user defaults are typically like set and forget, and you don't have complicated workflows or sort of object life cycles or anything. You're just flipping switches or writing numbers into a file.
Yeah. So there's some stuff here, but overall pretty simple application. It is 4 or 5 classes, and so we talked about this, and obviously we can do something entirely different. Graham is the expert on both of our streams. And more so on this one.
Not saying much on certainly on the Amiga one.
But on this one, Graham is definitely the expert, because he's the expert on. I consider Graham one of the foremost experts on Cocoa and Mac programming. Period. So on this stream, definitely. And so, what I think, and the way I've done this in the past when I've done even smaller projects or hobby projects or tiny things, the first thing I would do is go into Project Center and generate a new application. VFig asks, when are you porting GNU Step to Amiga?
So interestingly, there is an Objective-C port for MorphOS, which is a PowerPC version of Amiga OS. And it is an Objective-C binding onto the Intuition, so onto the Amiga UI libraries. So I think that GNU Step would probably work with the Xemul library. This actually may not be incredibly big of a deal. But what you'd have to do is create a whole new rendering backend. So, like, aside on how GNU Step works, like the core of like Cocoa is Foundation and AppKit, and the core of GNU Step is GNU Step Base, which is the version of Foundation, GNU Step Back, which is the version of AppKit. GNU Step GUI is the version of AppKit, but it can't draw anything. And it relies on another library called GNU Step Back, which is the rendering backend, which then interfaces to the Win32 GDI, or to the I think the default is the Cairo rendering library on Unix systems, or whatever other backend. There is like a Wayland one as well.
And MorphOS has Cairo.
Right. Okay. So MorphOS has Cairo. So like on a PowerPC computer, we could probably do that GNU Step port with Xemul, and not too much. Most of the difficulty would be in rewriting the configure script. On actual Amiga OS, what we would have to do is create a new version of the backend to use the Intuition drawing.
Yeah, and that and then you get into hardware constraints. Although possibly not as many as you might think, because this stuff originally came on a platform very similar to the Amiga.
No, absolutely. So, you could run anything like TextEdit or Terminal or whatever in. So the smallest next ever sold. I'm not entirely sure that what I'm about to say is accurate. The smallest I have used, which I can be confident about, was a 25 megahertz 68030 with an MMU and FPU, and with 24 megabytes of RAM, which is like bigger than an Amiga, but not by much. It's an Amiga with a memory upgrade.
Yeah, my 4000 can fit, I think, 24 megabytes of RAM if I can find 24 megabytes of RAM in the appropriate configuration. But certainly, the 4000 with an accelerator, even just a period accelerator, not one of the modern ridiculous ones. So it is not necessarily. I realize that VFig's question was probably tongue in cheek.
Oh, absolutely,
And not expecting a real answer, but that was fun.
Inappropriately taking things seriously is my jam.
Right. So, excuse me. So, yeah. So we're getting down to the end of this file here. Let me see if I have. I do not have. Oh, I do have page keys.
We're nowhere near the end of the file. We're about a third of the way through the scroller.
Oh yeah, we are only 35% through. Okay.
So you mentioned like opening Project Center and bunging all the source files in.
Yep.
That definitely works. Like there's not a problem there. What we also have available is there is an Xcode build tool for GNU steps, so we could grab that tool, compile that. This is what happened on the Amiga stream. People who aren't watching that stream won't know the depth of yak shaving that we go down in order to we go right. This is a really simple thing to do. All we need to do is add dynamic message dispatch to bash, and then we can do this really quickly. And then I realize that I'm chasing a rabbit down a hole. But if we add this to Project Center, then we have to do something about the nib. If we use the Xcode library, and we have to create that project. If we use the Xcode library, then we have to build the Xcode library. But we might find that we have no more work to do. Of course, we might find we do have more work to do. That's how software engineering works.
Right. I haven't used this Xcode building tool yet, and I would like to.
Okay, well
let's do that.
Yeah. Did you want to carry on? Is there anything else that we need to understand about the code?
I don't think so. It's my main point was it's 4 classes. It's fairly straightforward. Okay. Even though it's a bit larger than it looks, but yeah, let's grab the new Xcode tool.
Do we know what in here uses the application services framework?
I do not.
Okay. We'll probably.
It's possible that it was the dock drawing stuff.
Right. Yes. Yeah. That probably does need to use some weird stuff. If it's just badging, then there is a way to add badges in Cocoa that probably just didn't exist at the time. Okay.
So what I'm expecting is that when we try to build it on GNU Step, it fails and says this shit's missing, and then we just cut that shit out
or add it,
or add it, or eventually we will add it. But yeah, we might get away with just deleting the stuff. So so why don't we grab? I don't remember where that tool is found. I just remember
neither do I.
When
but
it was announced.
What we are going to do is, so for some reason, whenever I launch Firefox, I get this message on this computer. Oops, there's only one. So I've got a feeling there's a tool called Xcode build, but then there's a library called Xcode that you need in order for that to work. But let's have a look. Would have been easier to search libs Xcode. Let's see if I can find a tool and then work backwards.
That's a good plan.
Find a repository, that's what I want.
There we go. Libs Xcode.
Build tool. Yeah, so this is the Xcode build library. This is the thing that compiles the Xcode project files, and this is the thing to build using it. This converted them into make files, and this I think I wrote that commit. It is an empty app. At some point in the past, the GNU Step project maintainer decided they wanted to replace Project Center and Gorm with an Xcode-like app, created an empty project, and then sort of abandoned it. And that is that repository. But we definitely want this repository. We might want libxcode as well.
Okay. So we can grab that one.
I am not logged in to GitHub on here, and I haven't set up SSH keys, so we're going to use the HTTPS.
That's entirely reasonable. Look at that. Okay.
So, what we probably want to do is to just quickly look at the make file and see whether it depends on anything that we don't have.
Mm-hmm.
And it does depend on the Xcode library.
Right.
So I'm going to grab that first rather than building this, seeing the error, and then grabbing that, just because life is short.
All right.
But I think this is quite a sort of it is mature of the GNU Step project to move past like the makefile build system and to enable Xcode support, because ultimately a lot of people are going to be doing what we're trying to do. But they want their Objective-C code to live on. They're not entirely sure for how long that's going to be possible on the original platform, and so they're looking to GNU Step as somewhere to bring it. So why not make it as easy as possible?
Absolutely. And that, I mean, this is what I've always wanted out of GNU Step. So, yeah. So do we want to look at the makefile and try it, or do we just want to assume that we have everything we need and load the GNU Step environment and build?
Well, let's have a look. So it has no resource files. It has a bunch of header files. It has a bunch of class files, and it doesn't rely on anything else. So it probably doesn't even need configuring. It will just build. Of course, I am doing this on ARM64. This is a Rock Pro computer, and it may be that other people aren't using that, and that there's some weird type length casting issues or anything like that. But absent those problems, this should just build. Oh yeah, that reminds me. This is the first week where we are using entirely free software to actually run the stream. We're using Jitsi, so the two of us can talk to each other. We're using OBS to manage the stream, and we're using DW service for the remote desktop sharing. So everything on here is. Let me just ban that person a second.
Oh yeah.
How do I do that?
/ban.
I think I've done it.
There we go.
Right,
there we go.
Yes, good.
All right.
We got our first famous, but you are now famous. You are, you just had a shout out on obviously retain.
There you go. Yeah, we got our first spam on this stream. That's
nice.
That's great. There we go. There we go. All right. So that is done building. That was quick.
Yep, and it worked. What was the tool for video chat? It's called Jitsi. We are using a builder Jitsi that is hosted by the Free Software Foundation, but it is available at, I think, jitsi.org, and specifically Jitsi Meet is the application we're using.
And they have mobile apps. Yep. It works really well.
Thank you, VFig, for the link. So I'm going to install that library. Remember what
Jitsi is something that you can definitely use as a drop-in replacement for Zoom in many cases.
yeah.
So if you have been spending a lot of time on Zoom calls in the current situation, and you would prefer to use free software, you can use Jitsi for those things, and it is no harder to use than anything else that you're already using for this stuff.
Okay. Build tool
Mm-hmm.
didn't even have any warnings then, just built.
That's beautiful.
So I'm
All
going to
right.
install that as well.
All right.
So let's see what happens. That is not good.
No, that is not good. Do you need to run ldconfig?
Ah. Yes.
There we go. Okay, so it says cannot determine type information for NS constant string. I suspect
look how far it got.
it did.
It worked out what configuration to use. It worked out what target to build. It got the dependency resolution correct. It didn't have any headers to check. It copied the resources, including the nib, so that's likely to work. But also the icons file, and that's likely to not work. We're likely to need a TIFF image at some point in the future. I might set that as homework, or we can install the GIMP on what is literally going to be the worst computer for using GIMP that I have ever tried to use it on. Right. And then it failed at some point in the future.
Mm-hmm. So I would say that error cannot determine type information for NS constant string. Do we think it's possible that GNU Step just doesn't have NS constant string?
No, it does have NS constant string.
Okay.
That is, in fact, that needs to be built into the compiler for the compiler to be able to deal with the at double quote string list.
Right. Yep.
No, what? But this looks like an error in build tool rather. So vfig says, are you missing a header file? This looks like it was an exception in build tool rather than a bug.
Yep.
A compiler error. It's not Clang that's complaining, it's build tool that's complaining.
Mm-hmm.
So what I want to do is to go back, clean the library and the and build tool, rebuild them with debugging symbols, and then try again, basically. Try again in
Let's do that
in GDB and catch the error. So the way that you enable debug is make debug equals yes.
And that's part of the GNU Step make stuff, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
So
good.
I'm not proposing to what I'm proposing to do is to install the version that has debug symbols, because that is easier to do than to convince the other project to link against the other version of the library.
Yeah, and that is the point of this machine anyways, so it doesn't hurt to have debug symbols lying around.
Yeah.
This may not be the first time that we need debug symbols in some of the libraries we're using.
Yeah, indeed. Terminal's font size is also a bit small. That's not a problem. I can I can turn it up for new windows and then create a new window. Pick font. Let's have 24 should be alright. 24 fonts should be enough for anybody. There are some weird graphical artifacts with table view on this screen, so I wonder whether that's something we need to fix later as well. Eugene, can you tell me whether that is legible? I can read it on my OBS output window, but
Right.
I might be using a different screen size, so it might be doing anything weird.
Yeah, I've got a gigantic screen, so it's not a problem for me.
You
And
are not wrong.
you don't have to be sorry for complaining, because it's I mean, if you can't see it, then
No, absolutely, yeah.
we're not doing our jobs.
We are
So
exactly. We are putting video because we want you to watch it, and if you can't, then that's kind of self-defeating. Okay, I don't need to be there now. Assuming that I did actually install that. I can't remember now, so I'm just going to run the command again. I'm going to check that I've got a debugger installed. Yep. And right. Well, let's just run it and see where it crashes. At the same place. No stack.
okay.
Not helpful. Didn't notice you were squinting at the text until someone complained. Well,
Right. Well, there we go. Okay, so we have no stack. It says the process has already exited.
Oh, okay. So maybe
Is
it
it-
is a compiler error. Then it's just being bubbled up to build tool in an inappropriate way.
Is it possible that build tool is munging the output of the compile? Because all we see is the words building main.m. So maybe we can put build tool into verbose mode or something.
Yeah, actually, working out what invocation we need to pass to the compiler is going to be a fact. Well, let's have a look. Let's see if it's got any help. What it does not have is help. What we do have is the source. Do we want to shave
Yes.
that, Yag? Yes, we do.
Yeah,
Okay.
sure. That's what we do on our streams. So, I'm going to look over here too.
So I'm just going to search for no, compile doesn't exist. Source doesn't exist. Right, what do we think we do now?
Well,
I suppose we start at main and work our way forwards.
I'm surprised that we don't have help output or something like that.
So is there anything in the README?
The README is very sparse. It has one sentence, 3 sentences, one paragraph.
That's 3 sentences more than the Anti-RSI README.
That is true. Let's see.
Here we go. So there's a function build. That's all. Okay, so whatever it's doing, the tool is not doing it, the library is doing it. Yeah, so it's here loading the Xcode project into a container, and then it's asking the container to do that.
Okay, so then we need to look in the lib in the Xcode library.
Yeah. Now,
And
Okay, we're
PBX
fighting.
Coder.
Yeah.
Sorry. Yep. Oh, sorry. I forgot
So-
that my mouse is also mousing.
Vivek asked, are there any keywords the error should go for? It looks like it's just raising an exception when something goes wrong. So it looks like build tool has no error handling whatsoever, and that Xcode lib is failing. So we will look in. It's not going to be PBX coder, is it? It's going to be whatever the result of this
Right.
container.
Coder unarchive. Right.
So let's have a look and see if we. Oops. Let's have a look with the correct keyboard. It is a PBX container. So that is the
Okay.
the object we want to look for. Now let's understand it. Okay, so it's got build, clean, install, and generate as actions, and we are probably in the build action. Nice. Which then gets something else to do, but just returns the value of that. So if this thing throws an exception, then that will throw an exception, and the next thing dies. I kind of feel the need to run C tags on this project and then look for all of the instances of build.
Yep.
But I don't use C tags enough to be able to do that reliably. Do you use C tags enough to?
I haven't recently enough to be able to do it reliably. I'm pretty sure you can just run ctags current directory and let's see here.
Weird.
Oh, you're in the AntiRSI.
Oh yeah.
You want to be in the libs Xcode.
Thank you.
And then we can probably look for build. So there's the frameworks build phrase, shell script build phase, abstract build phase.
I don't know. Is there
There
a
is that
sources
there's that
build
string
phase?
that it's outputting.
It is
Yeah.
because we know that it's compiling main.m.
Mm-hmm.
So my guess would be that we want to be in sources build phase, except that says file build, so it might be in build file.m, but then that returns file ref build. Oh, whoever did this really loved their
PBX file reference.
yeah, they really loved their abstraction. All problems can be solved with another layer of abstraction, except for the problem of having too many layers of abstraction. Oops, wrong button. Here we go.
There we go. Okay. Okay, and then there's the string that it outputs when it's building, and it says building and then the file name. So if we search for the string building in that...
Well, so we're in here because it says...
Oh, yep.
This is an objc file.
Mm-hmm.
So it's getting the C compiler, building the compiler string.
It is using nsdbuglog.
Yeah. So there may that probably means that there's a user defaults we can turn on to enable debug logging. If only I knew what it was. I mean, we could find that out and do that. Nice.
All right.
There's a lot of stuff. This is a complex thing.
Yes.
Whoa. Nice.
Whoa. Wow, that is...
And there
that
you
is
go. You
something
see,
else.
it's redirecting the output. That's why we don't get the compiler
Right. Well,
output.
shall we... Oh.
Oh, there's an error out path. So we might actually have a build error.
Yep.
In the project. Let's have a look. No.
I do not see one.
I would expect
But
it
there's
to-
a build directory. Look in build. Nope.
Okay, so it has done the copy resources phase, but it has not.
Right.
No, there's nothing else in there.
Okay. Path build command. Yeah, and it's NS logging here as well. So we must be able to turn on logging in some way. I'm just going to move this over here.
So I am searching in a different window for NS debug log, which is a GNU step thing, unsurprisingly. It says NS debug log functions are enabled at compile time by default. To turn them off, set diagnose equals no in your makefile.
But we're not using a make file, so
We are to build.
is it possible that our...
No, we're using a makefile to build tool.
Right. Right. Okay. So then...
Right,
So if we set that and rebuild build tool... And
No. I
enable
mean,
it as well.
the documentation says that they're enabled by default, and you turn them off with an option.
Right. It's possible then that the default is overridden here.
It is possible. VFig makes a different suggestion, which is to make a dummy shell script that dumps its arguments to a file and returns 0. Put it on the path, then rerun build tool, or just log dump build command here. Now, interestingly, dump build command here is theoretically done. On this line here, line 437, I don't remember seeing that in the output.
Right. I don't remember seeing it either. Is it possible at the log level is NS log is respecting some kind of log level that we have?
Well, NS log is working because these are log
Oh, yeah,
messages.
it is. Yep, you're right. Yep.
So I like Vivek's suggestion.
The way that it's grabbing the compiler is by using GNU step config.
Well,
to get the compiler.
only if it doesn't already know what the compiler is, if I remember rightly.
Okay.
So here it tries get MCC, so we can just create a script and set CC to that script.
Yep.
And actually, we don't want to
You're
return
right.
0. We want to return non-zero, so that the first build command fails.
Yep.
Because the first build command is failing anyway. So let's where's my hash key? There.
Dollar at or dollar star, right?
Is it dollar?
No, dollar at is one. Dollar star.
Okay. Right. I probably want to make that executable first.
Yes.
What do I...
Dollar at is all arguments starting from the first, and dollar star is all arguments. So it should give the script name as well, I think.
Okay.
So,
Right.
What did we get?
If I could have my... Sorry, I need my mouse.
Oh, sorry.
Right, the compiler wasn't run. So this is an internal exception inside... inside lib's Xcode. Which is unfortunate given that we didn't get a backtrace from GDB, so we don't actually know where that exception was raised.
Right.
I don't feel like searching the project for the count message.
Yeah.
And that's a weird that's a weird exception anyway, because I as I understand it, the difference between the GCC and the GNU-step Objective-C runtimes and the Apple runtime is that there is some level of type information in selectors on the GNU runtimes, and that is the sort of So this is basically saying I don't know what type of variable I'm supposed to return here. But NS constant string count, I can't believe you can get that far into a program without having used a string literal, especially as we've printed out all of these strings that far up. So I'm not entirely convinced that the compiler, I'm not entirely convinced that the exception message is the exception message that we want to see.
Right.
I'm not entirely convinced that it's linearly associated with the error that has occurred, is what I'm saying.
Right. Yeah. And that it is a weird error, even if it wasn't so obscure. Like it's I do not know what the next where to go from here.
No, I wish that we had been able to get something out of the debugger. Now, what we could do is try setting a breakpoint at the beginning of this. If we think that this is the method that's failing, then we could set a breakpoint at the beginning of this and just step and see whether a line causes it to fail or not. That might not. VFix says this error seems to be arising out of GNU-step's GSFFI invocation callback. Okay, that's interesting. So FFI would be for message forwarding. Now we know that this whole thing. So what it might be is that the machinery is trying to call count on like an array. Maybe it's that the NS constant string doesn't actually have the count method. It has the length method, and so something in lib's Xcode expects to see an array somewhere in an Xcode project file and actually gets a string instead.
Mm-hmm.
Like this is basically a JSON decoding error, except it's a property list, not JSON, or XML. But you know what I mean.
Yep. So,
And that's why we don't have a stack trace, is because we're in some like random like trampoline code, not in a function.
right. And VFig, yeah, especially when NS coder is involved, the wrong object being passed around seems very likely. Yep.
So I've got a feeling that debugging this will not be easy and will ultimately turn out to be an Xcode project file doesn't work the way that lib's Xcode thinks it does.
Yeah, and I'm not convinced that Xcode project file is in excellent shape because it's an old one that's been brought forward to some point. So it might actually be identifying itself as newer than lib's Xcode can handle.
Right, I don't know
like that.
But yeah, it's possible.
Yeah.
Okay, so do we continue down this path, or do we do what you suggested 45 minutes ago and just create a new PC project?
Well, I really want this to work, but I think that we will get further down the road if we just create a PC project and build. We'll at least get into problems that we can solve in our code base that we own.
Yeah, nice. Okay, let's do it that way.
So, okay, let's. So I'm gonna type a little. I'm gonna move this project into its own directory, and then we'll create. Whoops. And then we'll create a new one in place and move the files over. I think that's the...
Yeah, VFig says we would get further if we just like ran GCC on the command line. We would have to run GCC on the command line with a bunch of GNU-step config arguments to get all of the header search paths and framework search paths. And hating and fearing all build tools is entirely reasonable, VFig. One of the problems that we had on our other stream was due to an Amiga that we used not having a real-time clock, and AMake not rebuilding things because they were newer than the current time. Right.
I double-clicked Project Center and it did not start.
It is starting.
It is now, yeah. It didn't... Oh dear.
Yeah, that's not good,
Well, that's not good. No, that is not good at all. So we will abort, and then we will do it again.
Insanity is doing the same thing again and expecting different results. And we got different results.
Right.
Today is indeed a good computer day.
All right, so we will new project. And we will put it in the projects directory, and we will call it. We will make it a...
You have to hold mouse on that.
Oh, right, yes. It is an application, and it is called Anti-RSI. And we will click OK. And then I'm going to move this out of the way. And... take a look. So, it's got some stuff in there. Nothing that I think is going to none of this is going to overlap with what is in Anti-RSI already.
Yeah. I mean, it will already have a main.m, but it probably won't be
It
massively
won't be
different.
called. It's
What?
not called Anti-RSI underscore main.
Yeah, I mean,
So
what I would probably do is in Project Center, add all of the .m files, and then just delete the ones that it's already created.
okay, do you? Okay, your Project Center foo is better than mine. Do you know how to do that faster than I do?
I
Oh,
probably
add files.
yeah,
It says
indeed
right there.
it does.
Fuck. All right. Um, and then we'll go
No, in
here.
.org.
Oh,
Yeah,
of course.
and then just don't pick the ones that aren't main.m. Do you have
Right.
you don't have a command key?
I do not have.
I am
meta
holding
keys, so-
command for you.
Oh, perfect.
That is not
No,
working.
that didn't work.
Okay, I'm holding shift. That's because I'm holding the wrong command key. Try that one.
And now my clicks are not registering.
Oh, nice.
All right.
All right, I'll tell you
So I
what.
guess you get to select them.
Ah,
All right.
I'm holding
There we
shift
go.
and it works. Okay.
Okay.
So I'm going to add those ones, and that should automatically bring the headers in, which you did.
Mhm.
Then other sources, add files, and get the main.m.
Mhm.
Now at this
And
point,
then those are probably identical or nearly.
yeah. So I'm going to remove that one. And there was another one in here. App controller was
Yes.
the one that we created, so I'm going to remove that one. Now, did it also remove app controller.h? Nope. Okay, so now we have only the sources from Anti-RSI. So now, I mean, we can build this so we can see like what does or doesn't work.
We shall.
And yeah, we know that if it builds, we still can't run it because we don't have the nib. But like,
Yep.
we'll move forwards in some respect. Do you want to press the button?
I would love to press the button. Make that window a bit bigger. Submenu opens and stays pinned. Yes, that is a next thing. The other next thing that I really like is you can detach it and move it, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Although my interaction is a little flaky right now.
yeah. It looks like you're
Probably-
still holding the resize gadget.
Oh, I'm definitely not.
Okay, well,
Just
let
wiggle
me.
the mouse. Okay, can you? Yeah. Anyways, I wanted to demonstrate that. There we go. It was
Yeah,
way
so, like,
behind. Resize.
We probably want the build command again, so we'll just tear that menu off and put it down there,
Mhm.
and then we can we can use this menu as much as we want.
Yep.
But
I love that feature.
also just press build.
Okay. Aha. We do not have NS date picker, and application services is missing, which we suspected. So now I don't think we're using anything from application services because I'm pretty sure I removed the code that needed that. So I think we can just remove that line.
Yeah, that is definitely what we should do. We should remove the line, and then see what see if it breaks in a different way.
And it also doesn't like NS date picker.
That is
Which
interesting.
I can't imagine that we need NS. I can't remember what we use NS date picker for.
Reset
It's for the
session
timer for setting the time. Okay. We could replace that with a text field, I suppose, for now. And implement NS date picker on a future stream.
Yeah, now is it that NS date picker doesn't exist, or is it that NS date picker is in a header that we haven't imported?
That's a good call.
Or is it or has it been implemented in a version of libsgui that I haven't yet used? Because we're currently using whatever is built into Debian whatever version of Debian this is, Ambient.
Right. So that'll
So it
be
could be
yeah, that'll be old.
yeah.
That'll be my grandmother's software.
This is when you tell us that your grandmother was Margaret Hamilton, the woman who wrote the software for the moon landing.
No.
There is an NS date picker 14 months ago, so it's possible that we just
that
need a
is
newer
within-
version.
Yep. A newer
mean-
version of libsgui. Yep.
Depending on how much yak you want to shave, we could just clone libsgui and find out what depths we need to build it.
I totally think we should we should just build GNU step.
Okay.
Or build what we need. Hopefully.
What's the command? So I want to do something like that.
Correct. Yep. Yep. That is it. Build dep or build deps. I can't remember.
Assuming that GNU step GUI is the correct name, which it might not be. It might be like libs dash.
Oh, that's a. It also might be lib GNU step dash GUI, but
No, it was.
Nope, there it is. Perfect.
Nice. Okay.
Excellent guessing.
That is basically my Debian sysadmin skill. Is like guess the command I need to use, and sometimes it's right.
My Debian sysadmin skill is remember what the command used to be when I was 12 and hope that it hasn't changed.
or that when it did change, they just put an error in telling you what the new command should be.
Right. And the beautiful thing about Debian is that it's very likely that it hasn't changed.
Oh, I love that we're getting tech.
We are getting. Yep.
Nice. That's probably for building
your internet connection is doing really well.
Yeah.
Right now.
Speaking of which, is that everything? Yeah, I am going to, while this is still going, take a quick comfort break. So I'll be back shortly.
Okay. All right. So, there's some chat that I haven't caught up to. So let's see here. This was VFig helping us, and there we go. Okay. So we're waiting for these to install. The way that what we're hoping is that the build depends on the GNU Step GUI package in Debian. That the way the Debian packaging works is that you have build depends and then you have dependencies and you have build dependencies. The build dependencies are the things that the system needs to build the software, and the dependencies are the things that it needs to be able to run. And sometimes, often those are different. The build dips, for instance, always include like the header files and so on. The typically stuff is named -dev. And what we're hoping is that the build dependencies, the things that we need to build GNU Step GUI, the new version of it, are not different than the version that's in Debian in this version of Debian. If they're depending on something new that we haven't got yet, then we will have to then install that. But this is usually just enough to build the new thing. Which is really nice. This may take some time, and it is running on ARC64, a Pine 64 Rock Pro, I believe, which is a not Raspberry Pi like thing.
Yeah,
it did not take as long as I was thinking. So,
no, I do eat a lot of fiber. If I lift this camera up and point it there, you can probably see. I can't actually see what you see. Right, there's my keyboard. That is the computer that we're running GNU Step on. It is basically an Allwinner based like ARM system on a chip.
Oh, it's not even in a case.
No, yeah, you have to buy these things like from they basically batch up the orders from like Shenzhen province when they make these things, and I ordered 3 boards and 3 cases, and I got 3 Rock Pro boards and 3 rock64 cases, and they're not compatible. Now the people I met the Pine64 people at FOSDEM last year, which was pretty much the last time I left the house, and they suggested using a Raspberry Pi case, but like while the
holes don't line up.
Yeah. Because this thing has got a like a 3.5mm jack for the power, and the Raspberry Pi has got micro. Is it micro USB? Yeah, I think it's micro USB.
USB-C on the Pi 4.
Right,
but yeah, it's
like
yeah.
None of them have got the 3.5mm jack anyway.
Yeah. So I have this one. I think there's a Rock Pro in this one because I think I bought it when you bought yours.
Okay.
But I got the right case for it.
Yeah. Nice.
I haven't actually used it yet. I have a drawer full of. I have in the part of my office that is organized. I have a drawer full of tiny computers, and this is one of them. Another tiny computer that you will find amusing that I haven't used yet is the Pine Time.
Have you seen this? Smartwatch?
Yeah.
Because I have the one that I'm not allowed to mention continuous integration around.
Right. I have that one as well, although I left it at the other house. But yeah, this one, the case doesn't attach, so you have to put it in the strap for the case to stay attached. And I had big plans for it, but it was briefly in stock when I put in an order for some other stuff.
Okay.
And so I added it, and then I haven't used it yet. But it was I think this was the best collected piece of gear that I got from from Pine. It comes in a little case with all the bits, so that you don't lose the bits for the time that it sits in your desk and you're not using it.
Nice. So does it do like smartwatchy things, or is it a Linux desktop in a stupid case?
No, it runs. I think it runs a free RTOS port. But it is. My understanding is it like it has a couple of demos on it, but other than that, it does what you program it to do.
Okay.
So, okay. So this did not work.
Yeah.
It's looking for.
So NS Edge insets.
NS Edge insets. Those are probably from another library, I guess.
I would have
Although
thought
I
that
would expect those to be in GUI. Yeah.
Yeah. No, nothing defines them. Which probably means that they're in Foundation.
You have the GitHub open. You can search NS Edge insets in. Sorry, I think I whacked your mouse on you there. Edge. In this organization. So, NS Edge insets is in Foundation. It's in NS Geometry. So we need the new version. We'll need the new version of Foundation as well.
Nice.
Which is libs base.
Yeah.
And it looks like Edge insets was added in. Yep. Well, it was added 4 years ago. So I would not expect your GNU step to be 4 years old, but with Debian you never know.
It is always possible.
We know that we're getting a very stable version of the software. We do not know that we're getting a very modern version of the software.
Has the file been moved in recent history? Because it may be that, or has that declaration moved? Because it may be that it's not. It's just not in the headers that are imported in that library, which I can find out here.
It looks like it was committed on 29th of June 2017, and I don't think it was moved.
No, so I don't have. Oh, it won't be in use local. It'll be in user include.
Aha.
Yeah, so
There
my
is-
my version of the headers don't have NS edge insets anywhere.
Okay. So then, okay. So we're building.
We are building.
This would have been an excellent time to use the GNU build tool shell script and just rebuild the whole thing. I'm really surprised at how fast your Rock Pro is actually building this shit.
It's not bad, is it?
Great machine.
Yeah, unfortunately, that shell script expects everything to be in the Subversion repository on Savannah, not in the Git repository on GitHub. So it literally doesn't work. We'd have to rewrite that script.
That is a yak too far.
Yeah, I was going to say, if you want another yak, we can go there.
Although fixing that script is certainly a valuable activity.
Yeah, what I will do after the stream is I will raise the issue about the crash in build tool on the Git repo on the GitHub repo.
Yep.
You know, because I don't mind.
And we have repro instructions.
Yeah, exactly.
Repro instructions because the thing we're trying to build is open source.
Yeah, exactly. So you know, if I do that, you know, if like Greg Casamento or someone fixes it before next week, then great. If we end up fixing it, also great. I don't mind either way.
Yep. Yeah, it would be helpful if we could get some pointers on here's how I debug this stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, true.
Okay.
I mean,
I feel like running configure is taking longer than compiling.
There is going to be a lot of I think we talked about this on the last episode, like the and yeah, you kind of mentioned it in the do we call it pre-roll? We didn't actually roll any credits, but you know,
right. The pre-show.
In the pre-show, you mentioned how old a lot of these projects were and how they've been brought forward, and like GNU Step comes from someone who worked at Slack wanting to port HippoDraw from like a Next to a HPU Xbox or something like that. Mm-hmm. So that configure script has been through like literally every Unix from Next Step to modern Linux, and every proprietary Unix. You can run GNU Step on Herd. You can like run GNU Step on any of the BSDs on Linux, on any of the proprietary Unixes. So that is going to have weird levels of craft that nobody on the project like understands anymore.
Mm-hmm. And the configure script, and also the configure script is actually generated, I think, from like AutoTool. It's become fashionable in the last couple of years to really shit on AutoTools really hardcore, but only because we don't have the needs that AutoConf and AutoMake were solving. AutoConf needed to work on, 100 variants of 30 different Unixes. And that varied in really weird ways. And we don't have those needs anymore. Everyone's running a Mac or a Linux. And so we just don't have the needs that we used to have. And yes, and also in the last few years, people have focused on tooling, and the tooling is fantastic, and I appreciate the work that's been done on tooling, and the Rust compiler gives really great error messages and things like that. But this is a legacy project and with legacy needs, and so it's not easy to. I am hesitant to shit on things that are built for a certain purpose, even though that purpose might not be relevant anymore, especially since if I want to fix it, I am free to.
So I noticed the message scroll. Actually, no. Before I talk about that, I'll acknowledge what Matthew Scala said, which is that people
Yep.
hate on auto tools, but it works. It does, but it works at doing something that a lot of people no longer need it to do, which is
Yeah.
which is fair.
Yeah.
So what I was going to say is I noticed a message go up saying that we don't have the blocks runtime, which is because the rest of the because this is the Debian stack, and because the Debian stack is stable when it comes to GNU step, we're using GCC, and we're using probably Objective C2, but without the libblocks runtime and without, so we won't be able to do like Grand Central Dispatch. There is a libdispatch for open source for other Unix, but shaving that yak means starting from the bottom, building the Objective-C runtime, building GNU step using that Objective-C runtime, and then building all of the applications on top, because at that point, Terminal and TextEdit and Project Center will all be pointing at the wrong runtime library. This is all possible. It just is not possible in the 25 minutes in which we want to make forward progress on porting this app, which doesn't use blocks anyway, so why would we bother?
Yeah, I mean, vfig says, or make a few simple classes to do the job that your blocks would do. We can make 0 classes to do all of the jobs that the 0 blocks do in this code base. It's pretty nice. I think that Debian is. I like the idea that we're using a separate machine for this, and Debian is the easy thing to get on it. But I think it might be worth time for both of us to investigate getting FreeBSD has the newer stuff by default, and several of the core contributors of the really active core contributors are doing this on FreeBSD, and so we might get slightly better mileage by investing some time to get FreeBSD on this. I don't know what the FreeBSD on Rock Pro situation is. I know that on Raspberry Pi 4 it's pretty good.
OpenBSD works, I know that.
Yeah. And OpenBSD is also LLVM based by default, and so GNU step on OpenBSD. But then we might end up in the shaving the yak of making sure that GNU step port on OpenBSD is up to date. So, it's a matter of which yak do we want to shave.
So apparently, the Pine 64 works for FreeBSD, and the Rock 64 does not.
What is the difference? I thought the Rock 64 was just a faster version of it.
Yeah, but it's got a different SoC.
Oh, I didn't know that. Okay. All right.
Okay. Well, actually, maybe the further I go down this.
Supported in 13, which is due to
nice.
come out very soon. Yeah. So, okay. So maybe that's the maybe that's a road to go down.
Yeah, because the live step distribution we were using on last week's stream worked really well for like blocks and for modern Objective-C support, but it didn't have very good screen output. It's basically, and it was harder for you to control than this thing is. So
yeah, I was able to click the build button on this one.
Yeah, I mean, if we can take the ARM64 version of FreeBSD 13 and then run the live step setup script, assuming it's a setup script, on top of that, then we're golden. Yeah, we've got the best of everything.
Yep, and it looks like there are pre-built FreeBSD images for 13 current, and 13 beta 1.
Okay, nice.
So that might be worth looking into.
Yeah, okay, I'll do that over the in between times.
I'm going to be in the same house as my cool computers next week, so I've got I will have some appetite for this.
Well, if you have, then we can just reverse the polarity of the neutron flow, and you can host the computer, and I can type over the internet on it.
Yep, we can. Yeah, this is This is a solvable problem.
Hmm.
Fortunately, we don't need new features. We just need not 4 year old, newer than 4 years old in GNU step features.
Yeah, yeah. I think that a lot of the stuff here is well old. If we look at 0.95.7 version of Window Maker from 2014.
Right. So the
There was a
current
release
version
this year or last year, October last year.
Yeah. The current version of Window Maker is 0.95.9, which was released on April 4th of 2020.
Oh, okay, April. I was earlier than I thought.
Um, and it actually there was a lot of work on it in 2020 actually. And there's actually been a bunch of work since the last release as well. I have a very warm place in my heart for Window Maker. I think it's really well done.
And yeah, this is the 2012 version of Terminal App.
Yeah, so it doesn't even include the patches that we submitted during FOSDEM 2 years ago,
No.
3 years ago now.
Which, for those watching the stream, was for high DPI support, which is a useful thing. I was using an Alienware gaming machine, and all of my GNU Step windows are about this big in one corner of the screen. So, I mean, VFEG raises an interesting point that just rewrite your blocks as classes, because blocks, Objective-C blocks are Objective-C objects. In a way, or at least they have enough weird memory layout that you can treat them as Objective-C objects. But blocks were. It's not that blocks were added to Objective-C 2. It's that blocks were missing from Objective-C 1 because blocks were in Smalltalk.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, I like. And I'm always skeptical of new things, but I think that blocks, the syntax is funky, but I think that blocks were a welcome addition to Objective-C 2.
And I think that their principle. So they were introduced along with the garbage collector, and they work a lot better if you have full garbage collection than if you just have automatic retain and release. Because what you need, all of that kind of weak self, or I've captured objects from the stack that I shouldn't have, goes away if you have an automatic garbage collector. But the principal use case, I think, for blocks is really the sort of callback and dispatch mechanism. And honestly, threads was hard in earlier versions of Cocoa. Literally, the one way to get it right, which nobody did, which was sad, is that you run multiple threads, you have an NS run loop on every thread, and you create run loop sources, and you schedule the sources in different run loops. People didn't do that. They tried to use locks and mutexes and stuff, and that was an absolute mess. So VFIG says small blocks have different return behavior. Obviously, blocks are just C functions of the state. Blocks in Smalltalk are really, really weird, actually. If you define a block in a method, then all of the code for that block is just compiled into the end of the method, and the block object is a thing that says execute the code in this method starting at this offset, and it just uses all those bytecodes on the end. So it is no different. It is just C functions plus a little wrapper object that understands the value message. But what the difference is that blocks were an important part of the language and the library in Smalltalk. Blocks in Objective-C are literally only used for things that were invented after blocks, whereas you didn't have if statements in Smalltalk. You had a Boolean, three Boolean classes, Boolean, true, and false, that all understood if true or false and would execute one of two blocks depending on their value.
Yeah, and then the blocks in Objective-C were used largely for things that we only wanted to do in iOS, or we wanted to do lots more of in iOS.
I think, that probably comes from the fact that UIKit was written after blocks have been introduced, because they were like 10.6, yep. I think. Snow Leopard.
Yep.
So, there we go. That is fifth.
There we go.
That is the wrong thing to type my password into. I was about to type a sudo command into Twitch chat. Oh, no, not that thing. I got that wrong and then missed the backspace key. There we go.
Okay, so that's
base.
Base. And then now we can go back to GUI, and hopefully that... I don't remember typing ld config. Right. But it'll be cached, so it's loading it from cache anyways. I don't remember typing ld config in modern times, even when I'm doing stuff like this.
No, me neither.
And I wonder why.
But it did work. And I'm kind of used now to what we've been doing on the Amiga, where you have to reboot every time you install a library because the library cache is built at boot time.
Right.
Which is crazy. I mean, why does the Amiga have a library cache at all? There isn't enough memory.
Right. And but it boots really fast. That's a great feature. That was actually in the Unix Haters Handbook. Was the only good thing about a Sun workstation is how fast it boots. And that's a very important attribute for a Sun workstation, because even though it boots really fast, you still spend a non-zero amount of time waiting for it to boot several times a day.
Now, in my experience, obviously Unix Haters was probably like Sun OS 4, and I had a Spark Station 5, but I ran Next Step on it. But I had something newer running Solaris, an E450 running Solaris 7, and that thing was rock solid. I think the only time it ever it came down on for two different situations. One was when when I needed to apply a kernel update, and the other was when one of the fans failed and the thing went into thermal panic and just dumped out the operating system. But it didn't stop. It just went down to the firmware prompt and said fix the fan and then press C.
Yeah, it's funny because in Linux land they're now adding support for slipstreaming kernel updates and stuff, so you can have no reboots and upgrade your kernel without rebooting. But in Mac land, you now have to reboot every time Safari updates. But that's because all of your software is based on bits of Safari. So
I'm going to retract what I said about not needing to reconfigure GUI. I probably did need to reconfigure GUI because it needed to know that base had moved from from user to user local. I don't feel guilty about wasting anyone's time now.
Right. Yes. Those 25 seconds. Everyone was treated to an anecdote.
NSDate Picker has compiled.
Yep.
We are that much closer to Anti-RSI working. We are
that much closer. It would be appropriate for our stream for us to button it up nicely in the last 11 minutes. On the other stream, for those of you that do not follow the other stream, we very often get ourselves worked into like 4 layers of deep holes that we do not understand, and in the last 3 minutes pull it out of our asses.
Or what we did 2 weeks ago, which was as soon as we cut the stream, I went, shit, I know what the problem is. Having like stared at this thing that was running but doing the wrong thing for about an hour.
Right. And so then we were able to start the following stream with, here's the fix for last week's stream. And we actually found a bunch of other bugs. So
yeah, I suppose we've probably got to the point on that stream where VFig is right that you are the rubber ducks, but that is true on the GNU Step stream. On the Amiga stream, we are the rubber ducks, and
right.
we are also the remote typists for people like Camilla Bowman and George Walker, who actually do the coding and just like shout at us in the chat, no, you're supposed to do this.
Right. I did not know that GNU Step had a concept of storyboards at all. This is news to me.
I knew that Greg Casamento had been working on it, and I knew that it had partial support. But it does have nib support, and I'm wondering whether if we just add the nib to your Project Center project as a resource and just let it copy it in, whether everything might work.
Do you want to do that while it's compiling, since you have
no? I think I'd like
input?
to deal with this sort of systematically.
Okay.
Get the source building and the app not working because it hasn't got a menu, and then
right.
and then give it a menu.
All right.
Because if that does introduce a problem, and then we end up wondering why that problem exists when all we've done is recompile GUI, then we're going to get things very wrong.
Yep, that's a good point. I was getting ahead of myself, I guess. VFig says Twitch codes Amiga. That is basically exactly what our other stream is.
Yep.
Although I think we have solved the entertainment problem on the other stream. I think the other stream is a bit more entertaining.
That's
some definition of entertaining.
And that is mainly because we turned up the emulation speed during builds.
Right.
I can't do that here. We are stuck watching this in real time.
Right. We went for a few weeks before somebody said, you can just click the JIT box in your emulator and your compiles will be so fast.
Yeah.
And then the compiles became super fast.
And now everyone complains that our code is inefficient and we don't know because it's running too fast.
Right. Yeah. VFig says we could just buy an M1. Graham has an M1.
Yeah, I mean, this stream is being hosted from an M1. The problem is that we can't reasonably run Linux on it. Like, what you can do is QEMU. And I don't know what they were doing in the WWDC thing, because they demonstrated like Debian running and at reasonable speed, but the only technology that's available to do it is emulating x86 or ARM64 or PowerPC for that matter in QEMU, and it runs like a dog in any of those solutions.
Yeah, and it was weird because they did the demo, and then weeks later, or months later actually, people, because actually it's only been the last couple of weeks where people are saying, hey, I now have Linux booting on my M1. I don't have one, largely because I'm waiting for the MacBook Pro M1 to come out, but also because it just doesn't run a bunch of shit that I need to use periodically, like, Docker. Nothing that I want to use. I mean, the M1 supports everything that I care about. It runs Emacs just fine. And it runs Emacs and Bash. and has a command key. Like those are literally all of my requirements.
Hmm.
And
Are you sure it runs Bash? Because
but
Z shell is a
it
default.
does.
Okay.
Yeah, it runs it, but it's not the default.
Yeah.
And it whines a lot.
There is. If you're using the Bash that is built into Mac OS X, they have written into the binary. It's not even a wrapper. They've just written in a message saying Bash is deprecated. But there is an environment variable you can set to suppress that warning, or you can install later Bash from MacBots or Homebrew or whatever.
That's what I do. I run latest Bash all the time. I find it amusing. I wonder, where does Apple? Because it's GPL, so they have to provide their modified version of Bash.
Oh, and it's up because I tested that because I thought, well, hold on a second, they need to supply the source for this stupid change, and they have at opensource.apple.com.
Yeah, VFig thinks it's funny that the M1 does everything I care about because it runs Emacs, but literally the only reason I'm a Mac user still is because of the things that we've talked about this, I think, on the last stream, and it's about the consistency,
because
which is
Emacs
running
has
away.
Cocoa key bindings.
Right, but and I mean Emacs is just baked into my. I have been an Emacs user for many more years than I have of my life than I have not been an Emacs user. And so it's just sort of it's in my brainstem now. But the only reason I use a Mac instead of using Debian or FreeBSD desktop or something like that is because I get a command key. Window switching works reliably. The consistency of user interface is still mostly there, nearly completely. And that is disappearing as everything becomes a fucking Electron app. And a lot of the stuff that I use is I run Discord and Spotify and a few things that are not Mac apps. Reluctantly, I run those things, but still the consistency of user interface is still there. And also because Mac OS is the platform where people who care about the things that I care about, such as consistency of user interface and thinking about the user interfaces, that's what they happen. That's what that stuff happens on Mac OS. So Omni, the guy who builds NetNewsWire, Kaleidoscope, we talked about earlier, is another excellent example of
that. NetNewsWire guy.
Brent Simmons, yep. The people who care about that kind of software are building it for Macs, but I think because of Cocoa, and that's why this project is so important to me. Vivek asked about the significance of the command key. The significance of the command key is that when you have a command key, the control key is not stolen by every application you run.
Yeah, that's what Eugene said.
Yep, further down, yep. And so on a Mac, I can do Unixy things in a terminal, and all of my Emacs key bindings work. And in every other application, the key bindings are consistent, except in a few weird cases, and those cases are increasing and so on. But it's still more true than it is not. And when I stop using a Mac, certain aspects about my organization and tools that I use to deal with my brain being fucked up are no longer available to me. I basically live in OmniFocus, for instance.
I mean, it was definitely true that like the next developer community, which was tiny in fairness, had a consistency of design and approach. I mean, if you look at like Andy Stone of Stone Design, like, apart from the fact that his icons are programmer art, like all of his apps look and behave exactly the same as any Omni Group app or any Lighthouse Design app or any Next app, for that matter. And separately, the Mac Apple heritage had that throughout the whole of like the classic system and the Platinum UI and all of those kinds of things. So what you got with Mac OS X was this convergence of that's good. I'll install that. You had this convergence.
Install it before it breaks.
Two communities that both cared very much about everything being consistent, and there was some teething problems because they wanted them to be consistent with two different heritages. But macOS 10, I think, very quickly brought that together. Probably 10.2 was when it started working smoothly, and 10.4 was when it was actually working smoothly. And I'm mostly basing that on the fact that there was some Cocoa Apple script support in 10.2 and working Cocoa Apple script support in 10.4, or usable. Right, I'm going to run ldconfig again because voodoo.
Yep. All right. And then I think we can click. I'm going to click the button.
You should click the button.
Hey, there we go. Now we're getting actual movement, errors.
Those are only warnings, though, aren't they? Oh, no.
No, process serial number. That's the application services bullshit.
Okay.
Yep. I remember that now. Okay.
And there's a bunch
what else do we have?
That's core graphics.
Oh.
CF time interval is core foundation.
Oh, shit. Right.
That can all be rewritten, probably.
Yep.
Those events will exist as NS event flags. CF time interval will be bridged to NS time interval. This stuff about the process serial number will either have to do something with PIDs, or we'll have to understand what it's trying to do and rewrite that.
Yeah, and that's going to be operating system specific anyway.
Well,
that's the thing that says don't click anywhere else.
Oh, right.
Yeah. That's this program has control of everything and you can't do anything else. But I'm sure we can still work around it. I mean, Objective-C is C, right? So,
yeah, and not only that, but NS Workspace can activate applications or keep them activated, so we might be able to do it through the workspace. It is 9:01. We have got from not being able to build because we didn't have an AppKit object to not being able to build because we don't have macOS 10. That is progress of a sort, and I think this may be where we call it.
Yep, I'm very happy with this progress, and I think that's a reasonable time to call it on time.
And I think that we will probably carry on with this on the next stream. I see no need to change projects yet. I will raise the bug. I was going to make a note of that. Because that is something that we can we can allow the rest of the community to fix while we're away. So I will look into convincing OBS to stream at a higher resolution. It may be bandwidth limited. Thanks to everyone who's joined in on chat, everyone who's been watching, Stephen for working on this project with me. It's been fun. If you want to
been great, thank you.
Do some Amiga programming, then we're on tomorrow at DOS Amigans. And otherwise, we'll see you next time.
All right. Thank you, everyone, for joining us.
Great. I am going to press the button.